C'est beau sous l'eau quand le soleil splendide se jette dans le vide.
That was Sous by Keren Ann, who has just released a new record, Bleue. It's the Franco-Israeli-Dutch artist's 8th album, full of melancholic musings riddled with hope and comforting tones that many of you may find soothing. She's also gone back to composing in French after 15 years of mostly writing in English. Oh, and the album also features some pretty exciting collaborations. And who better to talk about this new offering than Keren Ann herself, who has joined us this week in the France 24 studio. Hello, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you back. And now you've been known as an artist who's gone through, lived in Tel Aviv, New York, but also Paris, and now you've anchored yourself here in the French capital. Has that influenced in some ways your decision to write in French again?
I've always had one foot set in Paris, even when I lived in New York. I rarely lived in Tel Aviv. It was in the north when I was a baby. But yeah, it's been 3.5 years that I'm Parisian completely, back to being Parisian, because I have been in the past as well. And my sonic surrounding was mostly in French, so I guess it was the right time to go back to writing in French.
And there's the language you choose to compose in. Does that influence the way you write at all, or...?
Basically, I think that a language is like a texture. It's material that you work with, that you play around with. But the thing is that I don't think you can make the same record in both languages, in English and French. And I think that when you think melodically and also in terms of the sound of the words, you go into a French writing mode. You can set yourself in it. But I've never really stopped writing in French, because I do write for many other artists, and I've been doing it for a long time. It's just my own chapter, my own storytelling that in the past I chose to write and sing in English because at home and within my family, within my very intimate space, everything was in English. So I wanted everything to be understood. And right now, I think my daughter speaks French. There's a lot of French going on around me, so I thought it was the right time to fill in the gaps and tell everything I had to say in French regarding my recent chapter.
Well, let's take a closer look at a single from the new record Bleue. It's Sous l'eau.
Il me tue, cet amour. 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 Il me tue, cet amour.
Stunning video there for Sous l'eau by today's guest Keren Ann, who also directed the video. Can you tell us a little bit more about the atmosphere of this album? Because if you don't mind me saying, it's very heavy. There's a strong sense of melancholy, and if you've had your heart broken in any way possible, I think you'll feel very touched by this album. But there's also this sort of hope amongst this bittersweet feeling that things can go on and there can be an outing to it all.
Ever since I started writing songs, the only subject that has ever really obsessed me is love, and relationships, but not necessarily couples relationship. It could be fraternal relationships or just within the family and friendships. I like to bring in stories that are sometimes that are greater than that, and bring them into the interaction between two people, whether they're a couple or friends or anything. So sometimes I'd be writing about stories that are regarding countries and territories and waters and Great Lakes, and bring them into one room and tell this story as if it was just a dialogue or just a telling throughout my narration. That's the storytelling form of writing that I learned through North American songwriters like Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen and Leonard Cohen and Carole King, and all this. I mean, this form of songwriting is very important to me. I think that you get to tell a lot in just somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. So I do think that in general, when you feel in life, not necessarily only when you're heartbroken, but when you like to go into the intense and deeply into the senses, then you are touched in general by melancholy, however it is expressed. And I'm very much touched by melancholy because it's something very vivid. It's something that really lets you dissociate and understand the true moments of joy and happiness. And the greatest, the most exciting and happy moments of your life an hour later become melancholic because you're already nostalgic. They're in the past, so you already lost them. So basically it's my way to illustrate it. And in the video I also liked, I was very much inspired by The Last Day of Virginia Woolf. She's been an inspiration forever, but this very specific day there was something very ambiguous about the frenetic feeling that she could have had, like in her writings, before a tragedy. And there was that time that I could imagine within a room, and I translated it into me, just a room with a piano, and I know something either great, euphoric, ethereal, big is going to happen. Whether it's good or bad is not the point. And then the make her way to the river, in her case, put stones in her pockets and just let the river take her. In my case, just live the ambiguity about there's also a lot of life underwater. And a lot of things coming up to the surface. So yeah, absolutely. I think that if you have any senses or feeling, then you may be touched by certain tellings in this record. I mean,
and I'd like to point out to our viewers that you have David Byrne of the Talking Heads fame, who already sang in French, singing with you on this album. But just to finish up on that, there's a question that a lot of women are asking. Time's Up movement. There's been a lot of people being vocal now in the indie scene, talking about men who've behaved badly. And you've an amazing career that spans since the early 2000s. Did you feel at one point in your career that sometimes it was difficult to talk out as a woman, or?
I feel that I had to fight harder. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that when you're very, very young and you have certain skills, whether you're good at it or not, but you have certain success and certain skills, especially when it has to do with writing and composing and engineering and being in the studio and going from writing something very artistic and playing piano or playing guitar and then going and taking cables and doing something very technical, then everybody's looking to see who's the man behind all this. But then so you have to raise your voice louder a little bit or just do, but then I think it's very important to do it because then you set foot in something and you set example on something that is important. In my case, it's very important to set examples, like girls, get your own studio, record your own music, be your own technical guy.
Do what the guys can do.
No, I mean, they should try and do what we can do. We just need the space to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, actually, we've got a lot of women in the new music news today. But first up, we're going to move back to another time, a time when the Time's Up movement was perhaps only a twinkle in women's eyes. Yes, I'm talking about the 1980s and the decade when hair metal and Motley Crüe ruled the charts, particularly in the US. Now, if you've had Girls, Girls, Girls and Wild Side on repeat, or are simply partial to a bit of hairy spandex rock, you'll be delighted to find out that Motley Crüe biopic will be available next week on Netflix. It's also a lot to live up to since it's inspired by their band bio, The Dirt, which I have to say is an amazing book for all you rock and roll lovers out there. Let's take a look at the trailer for The Dirt.
I had managed the Scorpions, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Kiss, but I had never been through what Motley Crüe put me through.
I am sick and tired of not having any fun.
Everything's upside down and flip-flopping. Motley Crüe, no strangers to controversy.
Vince Neil was charged with vehicular manslaughter.
Tommy Lee and Heather Locklear have separated.
It's a degenerative bone disease.
Nikki Sixx has overdosed.
I know it's not gonna be easy, but I believe in you guys.
The Motley Crüe biopic, The Dirt, which will be available on Netflix on March the 22nd. Now, next up, some afro electro beat by Ibibio Sound Machine, who are releasing their third album this week, entitled Doko Mien. Tell Me. The band formed in London in 2013, where they were brought together by their Nigerian roots and love for drum and bass. Some of their tracks are a full-on blend of West African electro and disco funk. The singer Ina Williams, who was born in London but grew up in southern Nigeria, sings in both English and Ibibio. Here's a track taken from the new Ibibio Sound Machine album, Tell Me, Doko Mien.
You sing, you know the right way. Now you got something to tell me you want me to.
Ibibio Sound Machine there, who will be touring in the US throughout July, but they are also playing with the Chemical Brothers in London's Victoria Park on May 24th. And finally, Israeli artist Noah, who has over 10 albums under her belt, took part a decade ago in the Eurovision Song Contest and is a UN Goodwill Ambassador. Yes, how does she do it? She's a woman. She's just released a new record which celebrates classical composer Jean-Sebastian Bach, whose music she has performed many times throughout her career. Letters to Bach was produced by the legend that is Quincy Jones, and Noah, who has always tried to build bridges between countries and generations, says through this album she hopes to share her love for Bach and that the lyrics touch on politics, feminism, religion, technology, the generation gap, global warming, euthanasia, and love. Well, before we leave you with one of her tracks, I'd like to thank Keren Ann for joining us today in the studio. Remember, you can find her new album, Bleue. It's available online in all good record stores, and she'll be playing in New York on the 9th of April, Israel on the 2nd of May, and Paris's Olympia next October. Thanks for watching Encore. More news coming up on France 24 in a few minutes. And remember, you can find out more about our music and culture stories on our website, and do join us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. For now, here's Noah and the track No Baby.
No, baby, don't ever go. When I'm with you, I'm elated. All the rest is overrated. Every word you say and every moment of the day, the Scooby-Doo, the Shooby-Doo, gets me shining like a tuba, gets me seeing to a rover every single day. So, baby, so, baby, so, baby, so. What do you say we take a little stroll around the city? Go, baby, go, baby, go, baby, go. Sip and shake and eat the shopping. Then go dancing till we drop it. Whirl around and wiggle like an always make you giggle when the two of us are moving. All the universe is grooving and the rhythm gets us holding all our cares away.